If you've watched any of my recent videos, you already know. I'm tired of D-Day, I'm tired of the same recycled stories about the Western Front, and I'm tired of hearing about the liberation of France and beating Germany. It's always this good versus evil, cinematic, Saving Private Ryan kind of narrative. But World War II is so much more than just Europe. There was another brutal, sprawling front. A fight that stretched across remote islands, dense jungles, and the vast Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Theater wasn't just a backdrop to history. It was the reason why the United States entered the war in the first place, after the attack of Pearl Harbor. It was a different kind of war, filled with island-hopping invasions, brutal hand-to-hand combat, and devastating naval battle. And yet, despite its massive scale, its importance, and its potential for incredible storytelling and gameplay, the Pacific Theater remains one of the most overlooked parts of World War II in video games. I mean, just look at Hell Let Loose, which even has the North African campaign, arguably one of the most underrepresented parts of World War II, before the Pacific. Why is that? Why do developers keep returning to Europe and talking about stories which involve fighting Germany while leaving the Pacific in the shadows? And what could a game set in the Pacific Theater actually bring to the table? Today we're going to break that all down. First, I just want to say thank you for everyone who helped me achieve over 1,000 subscribers, as well as make sure to comment on what war or front you think gets less representation than deserved. Of course, there'll be niche video games that may have concurrent player bases of 25 guys, but when I talk about video games, I'm mostly talking about the more recent ones, which are mainstream. Anyways, as I said before, Japan was the entire reason why America joined the war. While there was a likelihood that America was going to enter World War II anyways, with us giving the British and the Soviets military assets, there was still an uncertainty due to America being an isolationist state. Much of the population wanted nothing to do with foreign wars. Then on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor with over 2,400 US personnel being killed. Shortly after, America declared war on Japan, and then a few days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the United States, thus causing America to enter World War II. The United States began fighting in Europe as well as in the Pacific, essentially two wars on separate sides of the globe. But here's where the divide begins. The Western Front, with its sweeping tank battles, snowy forests, and clear-cut evil, has always been the Hollywood war. It's easy to write, it's easy to sell, yet for the Pacific it's a little different. One of the biggest reasons why the Pacific Theater gets avoided is because it's messy, not just logistically, but morally. After Pearl Harbor, America's anger towards Japan exploded into open racism, leading to the internment of Japanese Americans and widespread dehumanization of Japanese soldiers. They were seen as subhuman, barbaric, and many Americans wanted revenge for Pearl Harbor. A game which would accurately reflect that era of American attitude would risk being seen as xenophobic or racist, even if it's historically accurate. This is also why the Western Front is so overused. Most media gets a free pass in calling Germans slurs or dehumanizing them, because they did fight for one of the most evil authoritarian regimes in recent history, as well as the fact that they are white. Because of course, you can't be racist if it's against white people, allegedly. What usually gets swept under the rug, however, is how Japan was just as cruel and evil. The Pacific Theater's dark legacy isn't just about what Japan did, but what America tried to hide after. America granted political immunity to military personnel who engaged in human experimentation and other crimes against humanity. With crimes such as the human biological experiments of Unit 731 to the mass murder and rape of Chinese civilians, it would still be extremely easy to utilize that black and white narrative that the Western Front portrays, even with all the racist stuff America did to Japan. But after the war, America granted political immunity to the perpetrators of these crimes. The reason for these pardons was because the American government knew that during World War II, a conflict with the Soviets would follow. America wanted to get all of the information they could. This resulted in America classifying most of the information around these crimes so that the data could be potentially used later on. Also, America wanted to make Japan a superpower against communism, which even to this day is still America's biggest ally in Asia. So with this, paired with us dropping 2 nuclear bombs, the American government really doesn't seem like they want to push this out into history books, thus resulting in the tragedies not being included in video games. Even without the controversy, making a Pacific War game is kind of difficult to make entertaining. The Pacific War was mainly fought between naval battles and aircraft. The issue is that today, many people don't find warship games very interesting. Yes, there's World of Warships, which is probably the only recent super popular naval-based game, but even then, it isn't really a World War II game, it just includes World War II boats. Not to mention, the same can be said with air combat-based games as well. Of course, the most action-packed part of the Pacific Theater was during the island hopping campaign, where many soldiers and marines would go island to island, fighting off the Japanese in order to use these islands for airships and logistic ports. The only issue I have seen with these being depicted in games is they usually end up pretty repetitive. Unlike the diverse setting of the Western Front, which include the beaches of Normandy, the brutal winters in the Ardennes, and the massive urban battles which occurred throughout Europe, most of the islands of the Pacific look very much the same. At least to the average person. I know the terrain and plans varied, but still. This results in gameplay feeling repetitive, where many engagements just feel too similar. The final issue surrounding the Pacific Theater gameplay-wise would be how complex and asymmetrical these battles were. The Japanese Empire did not fight like the Germans did in the European theater, where most of the time the islands which the Allies attacked were already surrounded, making reinforcements and resupply impossible for the Japanese forces. Due to this, the Japanese had to fight in a more unconventional way, with deep fortifications, cave systems, and guerrilla-style tactics. This type of warfare is extremely hard to depict in a video game, but that's also why a Pacific Theater video game can shine. Unlike D-Day, where the Allied forces were immediately met with German gunfire and fire support, when the Allies were to come upon the beaches of the Pacific, they would not meet the same kind of struggle until they had moved beyond the shore and grouped up, resulting in the Japanese to attack. The Pacific Theater gives off a lot of the same vibes which the Vietnam War gives off, probably because of the nature and fighting in the jungle. There could potentially be a cat and mouse kind of game where the Allies have to deal with the Japanese ambushes where anything can happen at any time. Plus, the roles could be reversed, where you could play as a guerrilla in the Philippines, fighting under Colonel Russell Bachman, where he had a crucial role in getting rid of the Japanese in the Philippines. Of course, this kind of fighting is very hard to capture in a video game, but it would be extremely fun if done well. Plus, there are a ton of untapped stories waiting to be told, which have not made it into the scenes. Whether we're talking about the guerrillas I just mentioned, OSS-backed missions in Southeast Asia, or the daring missions of the Marine Raiders, it's a shame that these moments in history are not depicted. And when the Pacific Theater is shown in more mainstream games, it's usually either as an expansion or only part of the game. It's very rarely depicted as the main setting of the game, and the only AAA game I can really think of which had the Pacific Theater in a good chunk of its content was World at War. While Call of Duty is not known for having the most historically accurate or realistic games, this game did portray both the Eastern Front and the Pacific Theater in the most captivating way in terms of video games. Call of Duty did not sugarcoat much, showing the savagery of both fronts, as well as the psychological toll of those who took part in them. The reason why the Eastern Front isn't depicted much as well is due to the controversy, but in a different way compared to Japan. If you want to learn more about why the Eastern Front is barely depicted in games, the link in my video is in the description. Anyway, with the controversy, moral depth, and atmosphere that the Pacific Theater has, any game which decides to take an authentic approach to the theater would create a unique experience. The Pacific Theater was more than just island hopping and flamethrowers. It was a brutal, emotional, and bloody front in World War II, one defined by harsh environments, asymmetrical warfare, and psychological toll that's rarely captured in games today. We have seen what's possible when developers take it seriously. World at War proved that the Pacific can be intense, immersive, and meaningful, but the industry hasn't followed through. Instead, it keeps circling back to normality while leaving Iwo Jima in the shadows. It's time we stop treating the Pacific as too risky or too controversial. There are powerful stories in the Pacific, stories of sacrifice, horror, and heroism, just waiting to be told. And if done right, they could give players a war experience unlike anything they've ever played before. So if the Pacific Theater deserves more love in gaming, maybe it's up to us to keep asking for it. If you enjoyed my video, make sure to like and subscribe. If you think there's another war which doesn't get the attention it deserves, let me know in the comments below. I plan on making a video about the North African campaign in World War II, and as I said in my other video that I was going to mention China in this video, but after researching the topic, I decided to make its own separate video. So if you want to see that, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.